Hello everyone. This presentation is about post-combustion carbon capture using 3D printed sorbents containing polyethylene and carbon nanostructures. In this presentation, I will be talking about adsorption isotherm measurements, dynamic column breakthrough experiments, and simulation and optimization of a 6-step vacuum swing adsorption cycle. We all know that the main challenge of CO2 capture from power plants is the large capture footprint. And if we want to bring down this footprint, then we must do fast cycling and operate the cycle at higher flow rates. If we take a packed bed, the main challenge at high flow rates is the high pressure drop. So consequently, we need to do more work to overcome this pressure drop. As an alternative, we can think about structured sorbents because they have the potential to bring down the pressure drop and improve the mass transfer. One of the technique that is used to make these structured sorbents is 3D printing. And this is gaining a lot of attention these days because it has the advantages of good control over the shape of the sorbent and also the channel geometry, the size, and the wall thicknesses of the channels. In this work, we printed a monolith by a 3D printing method called robocasting. Here, a water-based paste containing polyethylene and carbon nanotube was prepared. The paste was extruded through a nozzle at room temperature, and the extrusion process was controlled by computer. Once the structure was printed, it was then dried to remove the water. We started with adsorption isotherm measurements. For this, we had to crush one of the structures. And when we crushed the structure, we took samples from the outer part of the structure as well as the samples that constitute the cell walls. We measured CO2 and nitrogen adsorption isotherms for different temperatures. The graph on the left shows the CO2 and nitrogen adsorption. And if you observe the graph, we can clearly see that nitrogen adsorption is negligible in this sample. The CO2 adsorption isotherms show a typical pattern that you can relate to supported amine sorbents. And here you can see that the CO2 adsorption at 70 degrees is less than that of 80 and 90 degrees at higher concentrations. This is probably due to the fact that the adsorption kinetics is lower at 70 degrees than at 80 or 90 degrees Celsius. The graph in the middle shows two sets of data, and those correspond to the adsorption isotherms of CO2 in the structure wall sample and the cell wall sample. And we can see that the adsorption isotherm is much stronger in the structure wall than the cell wall. It's not much actually, but it's around 10%. But we need to take into account these things, that there is more active material in the outer part of the structure than in the cell walls. We also did some breakthrough experiments to measure the adsorption isotherms. The plot on the right shows the comparison between the isotherms obtained from the two experimental methods, and there is good agreement. One last thing that I want to say in this slide is that when we took the data to fit the isotherms to a dual site Langmuir model, we saw that the heat of adsorption was around 100 kilojoules per mole. This suggests that the adsorption in this material is dominated by chemisorption mechanism. Then we did breakthrough experiments with a 15% CO2, 85% nitrogen mixture. The adsorption part was analyzed using a 1D process model. I'll give more details about the process model in the subsequent slides. The fitting parameters were the LDF coefficient and the heat transfer coefficient values. The CO2 adsorption breakthrough curve is shown in the first graph on the left. You can see that the breakthrough is instantaneous. The breakthrough time was around 20 seconds. What you can also notice here is there is a blip in the concentration profile, and that we suspect could be due to localized cracks that were formed during the drying stage. But overall, we can conclude here that the fitting between the experiment and the model is good, and we can use the obtained LDF coefficients to do the process optimization. For the process study, we took a 15% CO2, 85% nitrogen mixture that is classic and that's been widely studied. We have considered a 6-step vacuum swing adsorption cycle. The 6 steps are as follows. Adsorption with feed, where preferential adsorption of CO2 takes place. Nitrogen is collected as a light product. Then the adsorption step is followed by a rinse step. The purpose of the rinse step is to enhance the concentration of CO2 inside the column. After the rinse step, we do a co-current evacuation step where the column is evacuated to an intermediate vacuum pressure to remove the remaining nitrogen in the bed. After the co-current evacuation, the column is evacuated to the low pressure in the counter-current direction to recover the CO2 product. The next step is called the light reflux step. Here, the column is purged with a part of the nitrogen that is coming out of the adsorption step. This is done in order to remove the remaining CO2 inside the column. And what we do in this cycle is that the product of the light reflux step is recycled back into the rinse step to conserve the purity. After the light reflux step, the column undergoes a light product pressurization step. The code for this cycle was written in MATLAB using a one-dimensional non-isothermal non-isobaric model. The model equations are exactly same as that of a packed bed. Two exceptions. One is the pressure drop correlation. The other is the correlation that is used to describe the axial dispersion. The purpose of the process study is to identify minimum specific energy and maximum productivity values for a 95% purity and a 90% recovery target. This is done by a technique called genetic algorithm. And as I said before, the code is written in MATLAB. So we have used MATLAB's inbuilt NSGA2 genetic algorithm function. We ran the code for 4,200 simulations. The purity, recovery, specific energy, and productivity are defined in the following manner as given in the slides. Please note that the specific energy that I'm talking about is on an electric basis and only accounts for the energy consumed by the vacuum pumps and the compressors used for the rinse step. The bounds for the decision variable are given in this table. So after 4,200 simulations, we then checked whether this adsorbent was able to achieve the desired purity recovery targets. And it was no surprise that the adsorbent was able to achieve the high purity because we already saw that the nitrogen adsorption in this sample was negligible. We also achieved the 90% recovery target, and we plotted the specific energy versus the productivity Pareto curve. The minimum specific energy is 0.72 megajoules on an electric basis per kilogram of carbon dioxide captured, and the maximum productivity was 0.57 moles of CO2 captured per meter cube of adsorbent per second. Now, if I can go back one slide again to the table, the feed velocity, which is basically the interstitial feed velocity, the upper bound is about 3 meters per second. And if I go to the next slide, I have plotted the productivity as a function of the interstitial feed velocity. You can clearly see that the optimizer chose values between 0.35 roughly to 0.65 meters per second. And this means that the velocity is not reaching the upper bound. And this can be attributed to the low capacity of CO2 in this sorbent. So to conclude, we have characterized 3D printed monoliths we did some process optimization study to see whether we were able to achieve the desired 95% purity and 90% CO2 recovery. We managed to do that with this sorbent, and we were also able to identify operating conditions corresponding to the minimum specific energy on an electric basis and the maximum productivity. This work did not consider the presence of moisture in flue gas. We are currently doing breakthrough experiments to study the effect of moisture on CO2 adsorbent in this sorbent. I would also like to take this opportunity to talk about some of the challenges that we faced during the 3D printing stage. The main challenge was the instability in printing, which was a result of phase separation. And that needed the use of additives. And when we use these additives, we actually lower the CO2 adsorption capacity of this material. And you can see a comparison between the CO2 adsorption isotherms obtained in the pristine paste and the structure on the top right of the slide. And you can see that the adsorption capacity has been reduced by about 60%. The other challenge is that the paste or the structure contained a lot of water. This means that the shrinkage was a lot higher. This is probably not a big challenge when we talk about lab scale systems, but if we are printing these adsorbents for pilot scale demonstrations, then we may have challenge due to the high shrinkage. And we have also not considered the presence of oxygen in the flue gas. We are talking about a supported amine sorbent here. These adsorbents have high heats of adsorption. And if the column sees a temperature of around 110 degrees, and if there is oxygen, then it can potentially degrade the sorbent with repeated use. The other thing that we noticed was that when we measured the pressure drop across the structure, it was higher than what was predicted by the correlations. And that we think could be due to the localized cracks as a result of the drying process, or it could be due to the fact that the sample was not cleaned properly. So there is some case of fines that is clogging the channels, and that could have resulted in a higher pressure drop. Before I conclude, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference for giving me this opportunity to talk about my work. I would also like to thank the partners of the Karmov Consortium, of which this work is a part of. So if you are interested to know more about this project, kindly visit the project webpage. Thank you very much, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions.